So my name is Jason Belair. I am the co-chair for the design tracks for Denver Startup Week, and I just wanted to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you for taking time to be here. It's quite hot outside, but it's definitely nice and cool in here. Yeah, right. Get rain tomorrow. So Jared Kleinstein is the correct?
Kleinstein or Stein. We haven't decided as a
Kleinstein.
family.
Okay, at some point you'll decide, but
One day.
One day. But so I want to do a quick introduction. But prior to this, I just want to invite each of you. This coming Thursday, there's going to be a keynote with Linda Gross. She's coming in from San Francisco, and she has done some really brilliant work on wayfinding and all kinds of work with Goodwill, fashion, sustainability. Really worth learning that language if you're interested. So please mark your calendars and show up for that. So Jared is a serial founder. He's founded quite a few things. I'm tempted to call every time I lose something and see if he can find it. No, I'm just kidding. But he's the founder of Gondola, Fresh Tape Media. He's the head, was the head of Sports International Content Strategy for Vine Twitter. He has a whole array of experience. Today he's going to be talking specifically about social content in 22-23 and how to stay ahead of the trends. I hope you all will enjoy this particular presentation. I think it's going to be really well received, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Hi, y'all. How you doing today? Good? Wonderful. So I'm Jared. This is what we get to talk about today. Before we start, how many of you either run or manage or coordinate social media channels right now? Wow, perfect. Anybody create content itself, like any editors? This is ideal. Wonderful. Let's get into it. So today, here's what we're going to go through. I'll introduce myself. This will be awkward. And then we'll talk about how you need to consume great stuff to create great stuff. We'll talk about content strategies that'll never get old. We'll talk about memes and trends, getting into your numbers, and then a secret that I'll be the first panelist to ever tell you, hopefully, and then a Q&A. Before we get started, the cool thing about talking about trends in social media is I don't actually have to talk about trends. Because if I talk about them today and then you look back on this presentation, you may think, oh, it's stale. So my goal today is to show you things that won't get stale, no matter whether you're working on them today, next year, next month, et cetera. So a little background, that's me, that's my landlord, and our security dog. He is a terrible security dog. His name is Manchego. We call him Manny, and he thinks everybody is his best friend. So if my house is being broken into right now, he is helping the cause. So a little background on my life story, since I have like one friend in here and then my coworkers are all late. I'm from Toronto originally. I moved here when I was 5, went to school in St. Louis for college. After school, I went to work for a company called Street Easy in New York. If anybody ever lived in New York, then you probably used it to find an apartment. We got bought by Zillow. It was a good time. In 2011, I made up a meme when I was drunk at a bar in New York, and it's only relevant if you are either from Florida or Colorado. So we have half of that here. But if I'll remember when Tebow was a thing here, and everybody was Tebowing, for better or worse, I take responsibility for that, and I share the trademark with Tim. I, after that, for some reason, was able to convince Vine that I should run sports partnerships because they saw the Tebow thing and they're like, oh, he must know sports. It was all a great show that I put on. But I ran sports partnerships for there until we got shut down in 2016, and then started Fresh Tape Media in 2017, and then we spun off a company called Gondola that I'll talk to you about in 2020, and then we launched it this year. So Fresh Tape, for context, we're a creative production company. We do content production for sports teams, leagues, media companies, social platforms. We've got 13 employees here in Denver. If y'all are ever on 8th and you're about to get on 6th to get to the highway, you know that bend that goes over to 6th? We're like on that corner, so you can see our sign if you're ever in the neighborhood. Yeah, that one. That's us. So this is some of the people we work with on a daily basis. Everybody thinks we're a different kind of company. So like, to Team USA, we're a production company. To the NBA, we're more agency-focused. The NHL, we do more vendor management stuff. Every day is different. It's delightful. And we work with all these athletes. And for all of you that work with, anybody work in sports here? Or work with sports teams? Yeah, so everybody thinks it's glamorous to work in like social media and sports. So you think like, oh, this guy's hanging out with Steph Curry. He's probably living the dream, right? But I don't look super happy. And that's my facial expression working with Steph Curry. And that's not because I don't like Steph Curry. He's like a phenomenal talent. It's because we were filming in a bathroom. And this happens a lot in social media and sports. Like if you are on the social team and you're making content production at like the NBA All-Star game, you're going to get put in a bathroom. It just happens. Boogie Cousins was actually using a urinal 6 feet away. And this is not a joke. It's true. Gondola is a spinoff which hopefully, have any of y'all heard of Gondola before? Anybody? You were literally, you're my friend. I've tried to convince you to work for us. Used to be called Fresh Tape Admin. It's a system for creators to take credit for their work, a la like IMDb for social content. So if any of you that raised your hands want to take credit for your work, you'd use Gondola. But we'll talk about that later. That's not the point. We have 4 employees also hanging out at that office and launched in February. Okay, so how do we stay ahead of trends in 2022, 23? The first thing is you have to be a good consumer in order to be a good creator. So you need to first start with your algorithm chasing. So if all of you are creating content for the platforms, I assume you also have active accounts on those platforms. In order to make them really valuable outside of just personal use, you want to be working their algorithms individually as much as possible. So you need to think about, for TikTok, what you do there versus what you do on Instagram, what kind of things you like. Because you may be bookmarking things and you may be sending things to your friends and family, but your likes and your engagement is where they're going to build their algorithm based off of. So use your likes to see a tailored feed. And then if you are concerned about like blending, like one day you're liking, a post from Lululemon, and the next day you're liking your friend's pregnancy post, like you can set up a secondary account for business use. Highly recommend it. Or you can just meld it all together and hope that they do a good job of still tailoring it to you. Next is making sure that your follow graph is solid. So following accounts within the culture of your interest or the industry of your interest for your business is really important. Try to make sure that you aren't only seeing mainstream feeds or secondary feeds. So let's just say you're a baseball fan. You can follow the MLB, and you will follow MLB. It's not the Major League Baseball. I've gotten in a lot of trouble for that over the years. You could follow MLB, and you'll see a very pretty version of what baseball looks like. Or you can follow John Boy Media, and they're making fun of MLB. And in order to get context into the culture, you can't choose one or the other. You have to follow all of them. Sometimes it may even make sense to follow channels that you don't agree with their policies or the way that they talk or communicate, because they may be more in tap with culture. Say what you want about Barstool, for example, and I don't necessarily love their morals, but I can say that they do drive a lot of the content culture that you see spreading to other platforms. So also, don't be scared to follow a lot of people. I think that there's this self-consciousness, especially on brand accounts, like, oh, we need to keep our follower amount lower than our or higher than our following amount. No, follow as many people as you need to get a great graph, and then if you feel like bored one day, you can cull through it and clean it up later. So if you don't consume, so let's say you're in here and you're like, okay, I run the social accounts for our brand, and we're responsible for TikTok, but I'm not really a TikTok person. That's okay. You just need to find the right people on your team and set up an infrastructure for getting information about what's actually going on those platforms. So you can set up an infrastructure so your team does what we'd call like a like fest, where you go through your likes and you send them to each other. You show people what you like. And if you don't have a team, like if you're an independent contractor and you don't have anybody else to show with, if you have like a partner or a best friend, like my wife and I, it's kind of weird at night, we like go through each other's likes on TikTok. It's weird, but it works. I get to see a whole new side of TikTok that I wouldn't see if it was just my algorithm. So then creators, how many of you, so many social managers, how many have actually outsourced work to either an influencer or a creator before? Yeah, awesome. It's going to become more and more popular because it takes a lot of the pressure off you, and there's an assumption that's, I think, accurate that the creatives that are engaged and endemic to these platforms, they know a lot more than you may about what's going to work, so trust them. I think that you can pay attention to brand content that uses influencers. If you go on TikTok and you see an ad, and it's clearly a creative that's front and center, take note of who that is. Is that somebody that's just one of their people, or did they clearly hire an influencer and work with them on that front? I think that we all are going to get past calling everybody influencers and start actually distinguishing whether we're working with somebody who's like a talented creator versus an influencer, and then just notice when you see like a paid ad. I think there's like a lot of people out there that we get frustrated when we see ads on social. For this group, see it as an opportunity. See an ad not as something that you're going to skip past fast, but something like, that's interesting how they're doing that. It doesn't look like an ad, especially on TikTok. You'll notice most of the ads are intentionally supposed to look like just somebody using TikTok, and that's because that content performs really well. Also, we have a Q&A at the end. If anybody wants to raise their hand, if you have questions, just do it along the way. Yeah, what's up?
Regarding content, can you speak more to paid paid versus organic? Because I think that we're starting to lose a lot of organic and we're putting a lot of focus in paid. And I would just like to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. So everybody heard that, the difference between whether you should be putting more into paid or organic. The decision should not be as much about qualitative, like how the content looks and how awesome your content can be, but about making sure that your CPMs and that your paid strategy is built around the numbers and that it makes sense financially. So I can say this because we've been doing a paid campaign lately, and based on what the conversions lead to on our side, it's too expensive to justify it. So if you're deciding between paid and organic, it should be built around, like, if you're a direct-to-consumer product and you know that converting 1 out of 2,000 people to a purchase is going to really make a difference, then you invest in that. But make sure that you know your numbers first. And then content-wise, I've actually seen the best strategies are when people take their best organic content, even if it doesn't have a huge audience, and transferring that to paid. Just putting a little boost behind it, because if you know it hit with people organically, then it'll probably hit with them on the paid side. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sweet. Okay. So, did I go? Oh, this is my favorite one. Okay, rabbit holes. People get scared of rabbit holes because they think that it's going to be a time suck. Oh, if I fall down this rabbit hole of watching all of this meme, then 5 hours later I'll be like so deep I won't know where I am. I think it's really valuable to dive into content rabbit holes so you fully understand the culture behind the memes you're seeing. Whether it's looking at the hashtag, or if you're on TikTok or Instagram, seeing what other songs are being used consistently across all the content. I think that's really valuable. Stay curious. If you see a meme multiple times, try to notice why those specific videos bubbled up to the top. Is it because that person had a big following? Is it because they took a different spin on it? Just sort of be a little bit, like, look a little deeper into it. And then understanding the joke within the joke. I think that's a really valuable thing, is that if you see a meme, like, I think I have an example. Okay, this is a great example. People were on TikTok taking stencils and doing latte art with stencils, right? And there was a whole, genre of content of people doing this with different designs, right? And that's fun. And if you are Nike, you can do a swoosh and then show like latte art of a swoosh. And then you'll get some people go, ooh, a swoosh. Or you can do what we did with Puma, and you can show this life hack. Sorry, I didn't include the audio because it was just... So like that video has 6.6 million views and is the highest performing Puma TikTok of all time. And we will spend thousands of dollars on a content shoot for Puma that'll get 20,000 views. And that was a text message, hey Max, can you do a bad stencil latte art today? Great. But that's the joke within the joke. People don't start with bad stencil art. They start with good stencil art and then people making fun of it. So there's that. Okay, now let's talk about creative strategies that'll never get old. So what does it mean to be creative? I like this one because I listened to like a Freakonomics podcast that went on this whole rant about what creativity is. And you don't have to read this whole paragraph, but the bold part, everyone has these two impulses. One is the desire for regularity and comfort. The other is the quest for surprise and novelty, right? If you have too much regularity and comfort, you get bored. If you have too much surprise and novelty, you get overexcited, wired, distracted, and exhausted. So the reason I bring that up is because when it comes to social content, you can't always be novel. So let's just say you're like a soda company. If you're Pepsi, if you just make a trippy video that's like crazy colors flying all over the place and a Pepsi's in the middle, it's a bit too novel, right? People will be like, why am I looking at this weird trippy video of a Pepsi? You can't be entirely recognizable too. So if you just take an old Pepsi ad, put it up and say, hello, creativity, this is our ad from 60 years ago, that's not creativity. So you have to be inspired by history with a refreshing execution. That's kind of the secret sauce for tying together nostalgia and current trends. Yeah?
So if we compare creative types, people who tend to, do these types of jobs with the general public, where do we generally stand on this balance between regularity and comfort and surprise and novelty? Like, do we have a higher tolerance for novelty than the average person? Does that need to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about that?
We do. And that's a great point. So the question is, do we as a creative population have a stronger tendency towards the novel and unique type of content than the general public that may lean towards nostalgia and older content? I think you're spot on that did I reiterate it okay? Okay. So I think you're spot on that we do. And it's a tendency for a lot of us to put what I'd say is too much sauce on our content because we think that creatives want to see too much sauce. So there's two reasons there's two things that come out of that. One is that may be okay from a recruiting side. So an example is in college football, you'll see a lot of edits that seem pretty saucy. They've got a lot of edits. It's fast moving, it's cool, it's crazy. And the general public wants to see a touchdown. Right? That's what they care about, right? So the reason sometimes you do the sauce is because you're setting up that as a company, you can make sauce. You are showing everybody you have this, like the technical skills to be crazy. And I think that's valuable on the recruiting side, on the sort of like brand building side. But I think you're totally right. The nostalgia definitely hits more with the general public. I'll give you an example. So the Broncos are a client of ours, and we did a Friends parody a few years ago. It's actually one of the first projects our company ever did. And it's a perfect example of hitting into nostalgia. It's the Friends theme song. People get excited. They want to, see it. It was a really bad edit. I did the edit. I should not be editing. It got 1.3 million views. It was one of the most popular Facebook videos of all time. And we even used, we were scared of using the actual song because of music rights issues. So we had somebody sing a fake song. And the lyrics were about how you're not even listening to the song. Regardless, people love that stuff. They love the nostalgia, right? And I think that they will, if you look at like a trend is like people going and making the Full House theme, but with X stars, right? That stuff is going to hit. I think that you just need to find a balance so that you don't hate yourselves creatively and you think, I'm still doing something cool and innovative, but you need to get that nostalgia stuff. So an example is like, I mentioned the Pepsi example before. You can't just show the Kendall Jenner commercial from a few years ago. Y'all remember that nice, delightful, controversial? But you could insert puppies. Imagine a puppy carrying a Pepsi over to a puppy guard. That would be cute. I think I would be less mad about that now. Which brings me to music, because that was like, a lot of that, the hatred for that was also like the inspiring music. But music is really important when it comes to your content creation, and it has been for many years. How many of you have access to a royalty-free music library? Awesome. If you don't, there are so many good ones that are really not that expensive, whether it's Epidemic Sound, Artlist, who else do we use? Sorry? I don't know them. Soundstrike? Soundstripe. See, there's so many good ones. I didn't even know about that one. And the content, there's some great audio in these libraries. What happens over time that's really fun is you'll put something in the background of a video that you make for social media, and then you'll watch a Budweiser commercial, and they'll use the exact same song on TV, and you're like, that sounds really familiar. But that's really, using the music libraries, those royalty-free libraries is really valuable. Also, you should be using the libraries in the systems. TikTok has spent so much money so that you can, they have music license rights. If you're doing anything that's not, paid content and you want to be using their library, you should. Also gives you an opportunity for discovery. But please do not plan your content around popular music. The reason I stress the Epidemic stuff so much and the royalty-free stuff is that all these music labels are cracking down so hard on use of their music for branded content. So you don't want to be the company that in 2 years gets a DMCA takedown request and you're asked to remove a video from years ago. You get banned on Twitter for something that you thought was no big deal. So like, y'all remember when Drake had Hotline Bling and everybody was making memes to Hotline Bling? Yeah, like all those videos got taken down. And now people are like, oh shoot, that was my highest performing video of all time and it's gone. So don't plan around use of popular music if you can. Maximizing opportunities when it comes to your content shoots is a really important thing we stress. So let's say you are New Balance and you're doing shoots for these rainbow colored, I don't know what shoe this is. You can just take pictures of the shoe, put them as organic pieces of social content, call it a day, right? Or you can maximize the opportunity that you have with a shoot and do BTS capture of people taking the photos. So now you have not only the original assets, but you have a great piece of content for TikTok that you can use that shows sort of, there's a meme of the shooter and the shot. So you can follow that trend and have the content that shows behind the scenes of who made something. And then you're there with a shoe and people's cell phones. Take as much social content as you can because you probably have great lighting. So capitalize on your shoots. We like to think that if you come out of a shoot just with the brand assets, then you're missing out on a ton of organic content you can create. Some strategies for growth that we see right now working a lot. Series. So you don't have to plan your series out in advance. Anybody have a brand that we can use as an example that they work on? I want to kind of think of, be tested on the spot. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hot sauce. Amazing. So you can do a hot sauce challenge where you have people have to say a sentence with a straight face after they taste a hot sauce. And you show everybody's face as they're crying and trying to say, like, anti-disestablishmentarianism, right? But like, whatever it is, or they say your hot sauce brand with a straight face. That could be great on its own, but if you can think of ideas that you can imagine that part 6 or part 8. People love on TikTok being surfaced, hot sauce, the hot sauce challenge part 8, because now they're driven to go back to the TikTok account and consume all the original part 1 through 7. So you don't have to plan all 8 parts, but when you're thinking of content concepts, think about ones that are easily replicable. This is particularly valuable on TikTok. Next, threads on Twitter. There's a guy named Brian in the back who's really good at threads. And thinking about how you can take content that would have been a blog post and now breaking it out into tweet threads. It'll make you seem like some weird Web3 influencer, or in a year from now, that'll just be how everybody is tweeting stuff. Next is Reels. This is also something that a guy named Brian in the back was talking about the other day. Instagram has put such a heavy emphasis on Reels, but they really don't want you to just export something from TikTok and plug it in. So whatever, even if it's an extra 15 minutes of work to do some of the cutting in the Instagram app, they are gonna reward you on the viewership side. Be careful when it comes to growth tactics and always be aware of what somebody is doing now and that they may stop doing it if the platforms start punishing them. So there was this stupid trend a few months ago where Instagram was trying to promote use of carousels. So what they did is all these sports brands would do a freeze frame that was like blurry of the video. You would tap because you're like, wait, is this supposed to, is buffering? Like, why am I seeing this right here? And then you'd realize, oh, it's a carousel, and you'd go to the next one and you'd watch it. And everybody, Bleacher Report, ESPN, they were all doing this tactic. And it was objectively bad content. It was a blurry thing in the middle of people's feeds. So be mindful that if you see a growth tactic that people are doing, you can try it in the moment, but don't go so heavy on it that you can't go back to following a different path. Hit me.
Going back to Twitter, given the nature of everything that's happening with Twitter at the moment, how much investment do you think is important to continue to execute on in that space?
That's a great question. I love Twitter. The question is, how much, considering everything that's going on, should you still invest in Twitter? I think that if you have a D2C brand, if you sell slap bracelets that crushes on Instagram, it may not crush on Twitter anyway. So if your platform is like endemic to Twitter. Whether you're a media company, whether you have stories to tell, stuff like that. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think that like as a former Twitter employee, this is going on the internet. Okay. As a former Twitter employee, and Twitter's like disclosure, they're one of our biggest clients. This is how it's always been. There's always been a like, oh my God, is everything going to be okay at Twitter for years? And the question has been, what's Twitter going to do? Because they invested in Vine and they shut that down. Are they going to have some crazy? There's always drama, and that's like why we all keep coming back. Like it's just it's the best. Like also they've totally adapted their algorithm lately. Has any diehard Twitter users here? Anybody use Twitter? Have you noticed how your algorithm has changed? I see so much funnier stuff than I ever saw before. They want me to love it the way I love TikTok, and they're doing it. So I think that it's like ripe to be used right now. If you're thinking about paid spend, I don't know. It goes back to the thing from earlier. Think about where you're actually getting the best cost for your expense. But I love it there. Yeah.
It really seems like people that I was shocked. It really seems like people that I might connect with, that I would want to connect with, are really on Instagram, right? So it seems like my audience isn't on Twitter, although I love Twitter, especially like for artists. There's like really awesome artist community on Twitter, and actually a lot of artists have moved over to Twitter from Instagram recently because the algorithm on Instagram is really punishing artists that work in still images. So anyway, it's just kind of, I would love to be more active on Twitter, but there's just not, it seems like my audience isn't there.
Yeah, so the question is, if your audience isn't there, like if you're in the artist world and it's much more Instagram focused, I think the good news with Twitter is that their algorithm can go up and down, but like most of us, like we'll still use it even if we don't get a fraction of the engagement, right? Like I get excited when I get like 6 retweets, right? And if I get 400 likes on Instagram, I'm like, they hate me, you know? So I think that thinking about like if you're thinking about why you should invest in Twitter, it's like, do you have good messaging for it? And is there the interaction where you want to be driving people to external links constantly? That's another good reason to use Twitter. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a sidebar too, but like the idea of like 1,000 true fans is more valuable than 100,000, nobodies.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that's important.
Yeah, as Mike just said for the camera, that 1,000 true fans is more than 100,000 nobodies. Also, Mike was the one that brought this dongle here, so he really saved the day. So if it wasn't for Mike, this presentation would not be happening, or you'd be. Anybody needs a dongle, Mike has got you. We met on the elevator. He saved the day. Dongle. It's a great word. What a word. Yeah.
What would be your strategy around reinforcing everything that you just shared to a room of folks who are saying it plainly and nicely, I think, not as aware as to what's going on in the world of social and how quickly it moves, especially when they're upper management and C-suite, and they've been very removed from the platforms and the day-to-day and the nuances of it.
When it comes to communicating to people, I mean, like, this is the challenge of the world, is that people still think of social media as like the intern. Like, oh, give the social media intern a raise. And it's a team of 12 people that are running the content, right? We've all seen that interaction. So when it comes to communicating it to upper management, you have to think about how you'd communicate anything to them, and it's numbers. And especially when it comes to, let's say you're comparing broadcast, like if you're a sports league or a team or something, and you're trying to compare why they should be investing in this, you can say to them, hey, here's how much you spend for this conversion on broadcast, and here's how much you spend for this conversion on social. Bring the numbers to them more than, like, I can talk qualitatively about what kind of content's dope all day. The upper management doesn't necessarily want to see dope stuff. They want to see numbers. And they also, like, there's a generation of people that are suckers for reviews on some capacity. We all are sort of suckers for reviews. We like use Yelp even if it's a bunch of strangers saying we should go to a restaurant. If you have testimonials, either from users, clients, customers that are social driven, show those to people. Like even those like small individual tidbits, you can say, look at what this person said about what we're doing. Like show those off. Don't be afraid to flex it. Let's talk about memes and trends. Okay, so this is a fun graph. This is a post-to-time graph that I made up. Actually, Cam did it in the back. So the question is, when can you jump in on a meme or a trend? So if you did y'all know the meme a few weeks ago of like, he's a 6, but he presents at Denver Startup Week, right? So when can you publish in that? So there's this nice little graph here where we recommend, you don't necessarily need to be right here, but somewhere in this little fun range over here is where you want to be publishing. You're okay if you're back here. You're still going to get some good long tail in terms of like the content hasn't jumped the shark. But you really don't want to be late to a meme, right? So you'd expect the graph to look, me saying that, you'd expect the graph to look like this, right? Like, ooh, if you're late, you're toast. But in fact, in social, there's actually this like statute of limitations of sorts where if you wait long enough, something is funny again. And I say this with full respect to anybody, like I'm a big animal advocate. If anybody works for PETA here, I love what your organization does. If you made a Harambe joke right now, people would be like, oh, I remember Harambe. That's funny. But you couldn't do that from 2016 to 2018 after the meme had died, right? So now there's this fun meme cycle where if you're thinking right now you don't know what trends are trendy or what memes are funny, look back for a 5-year-old meme that everybody thought was hilarious back then and bring it back as a callback. That's a nice little easy trick. I just said that. Next, imitation. So if you see something, oh yeah, go ahead.
So, as far as like the parody or like the satire, like the Google one, that would make fun of the meme, does that have a little bit of longer lifespan than the meme itself?
Yes. Also, there's a time and when you look at your content and you're thinking about like, is something evergreen funny? Like I think that the latte art did really well and performed really well because of the time that it was published, but y'all laughed at it still, right? So thinking about what kind of memes are funny no matter what is happening trend-wise, those kinds of things will have a longer shelf life. And yeah, the joke within the joke, you may be lost on like thousands of people, but if you hit it with a couple or if it's just endemically funny on its own, then go for it. So imitation. When it comes to imitation, it's the sincerest form of flattery. That's what everybody says. Imitation with credit is the sincerestest form of flattery. So when you're taking a meme from somebody, especially if it's in the early phases, telling people who it was inspired by is something you shouldn't be scared to do. Doing that does a little bit of credibility handing. There's like this IB colon, which translates in internet speak to inspired by. So if you ever see like somebody says like VC colon, it stands for like video credit, so you don't have to say video by Jared. You can always say IB colon, and then people are like, oh, that's cool. That person's also very likely to share that meme again if you give them credit. We believe in crediting people, and then just in general, credit your team. If there's somebody on your team that was the face of something, don't be afraid to tag them as an individual. Be memeable. So sometimes, to the point from before about like things that have a shelf life that's a lot longer, it's a good example is this family that had a reaction to a college admittance. And people made all these memes reacting where it's as if like this person was making chicken and this family was like celebrating it, right? So you don't know when that TikTok came out, right? I don't know. That was like a 2-year-old TikTok, I think, right? But if you think about, I can make something that's not off-brand, but it's like hilarious and memeable. So if you have a team, you work at Commons on Champa, this is your team, and you all gather in a frame, like stacked on the frame, and you all look at the screen and you go, like that, like some crazy reaction. People can make it into a meme if they want, and it's not out of color. It's not bad color. It's, good content. Yeah.
So you were a brand making money, and you use this family. Do you owe this family money?
A couple things. First of all, if they used a popular song and you were a brand using money, then you shouldn't do it with theirs because then your video content is using the mainstream song and you could potentially have the content taken down. Should you if you use it, you should not give them money if it's duet style like this necessarily. You should give them credit. Also, the way that TikTok works with duets, like if y'all use the TikTok duet function, it automatically gives them the credit, so you're kind of okay there. If you were doing it a little different, where you said, "Hey, you're the family who did that college reaction. We want you to come in for a video," then you should pay them. So like we did that with there was a kid who skateboarded. No, he was on a scooter. He was a small kid, and he was in a skate park. Somebody did a trick, and he goes, "That was legitness." Does anybody remember that from like 2015? So we flew him to the X Games, and we got him to say that when Tony Hawk did a trick. So that was legit, but we like paid for him to come out. Twitter didn't pay for it. They didn't pay him. They just paid for all this stuff. Looking back, we should have paid him. If you're legitness kid, if you're watching, we should have paid you. I don't control Twitter's budgets. Next is trusting young stars. If you have people on your team that know TikTok, they know Twitch. We have somebody on our team named Katie, a designer, who like knows streamers better than I know anything other than like the '96 Colorado Avalanche roster, and she's like tapped into that culture. If you have young creatives on your team, tap into what they're using. An example of why that's important is Twitch like created this whole format, and YouTube like reaction videos became a thing for the last 5 or 6 years. And now ESPN does the Manning Cast. Has anybody watched the Manning Cast? It's like an alternate way to watch Monday Night Football, and it's just two people sitting on their couch talking smack about the game. Like they're doing no play-by-play, and it's just them being like, "Oh no, he should have called the timeout there. That was stupid," right? Like it's like a whole different way, and young generations love it, and the content is so much better for social. So pay attention to what your young people are watching. The other thing is let people become stars. So if you have a brand that sells notebooks and you're thinking of who should be starring in the TikToks, you can hire an actor. But if you have somebody internal that can be in all of the content and maybe in a lot of content going forward, then they can become a recognizable personality. Great examples of that are the Washington Post TikTok guy, who now his entire like Twitter name is Washington Post TikTok guy. You also see that with BuzzFeed. They did such a good job of getting their stars recognizable, so they were able to spin it off into mainstream entertainment careers. And then last, getting into the numbers. You should know your numbers, but I can say all this about what's trendy and what's good and what's cool, and it may not work for you. So be like analytical, really get into the stats on what's performing well for you. Lean into what's working. So as I mentioned before about the series concept, if you have a good series and you know that because the numbers are showing it, lean into that. Analytics is your guide, not your Bible. If you're taking risks about like growth strategies, like you're going all in on carousels and they aren't performing well, be ready to adapt. And then use Gondola. So that's a fun segue for what Gondola is. This is Gondola. The basic premise of Gondola is all of you that raised your hand and said you make content, I bet on all that content, maybe 0.5% says that it was you that was behind it as an individual. So Gondola's built a platform where you can take credit for your work. So that's my daughter in an Avalanche TikTok. Let me see. So an example could be the NHL has an Instagram page. If they go to this amazing news that everybody here, Nathan McKinnon, back for 8 years as a Colorado Avalanche. That's great. We're going to be good for a really long time. Somebody made this image, right? This was not, I don't think DALL-E did an AI image creation of Nathan McKinnon signing. Somebody was behind this. So you can go into this piece of content, paste it into Gondola. It's right here. And you can see the embedded content. You can give credit. And I can say, I was the graphic designer for the NHL. And when I hit save, now I get credit for my work as the graphic designer. So the reason that I'm recommending you do this is not because you should be taking credit for the NHL's work. I did not make that. I'm going to delete that. But you can keep track of your own data. So if I want to go into my own profile, I can see that I'm responsible for 579 posts for 60 million views. You all have long careers in creative ahead of you. So as your careers go on, instead of that sort of history and that portfolio being a LinkedIn paragraph that says, responsible for the social content for Capital One, you deserve a visual resume that also serves as an analytics portfolio. So if I want to go here and see everything I made from the NBA All-Star Game in 2019, I can go in, and in 2 clicks, I can see I was responsible for 190 posts, for 1.7 million views, for 731,000 likes. So I highly recommend you use a service like this. If you use Sprout Social or any of the other social analytics platforms, they're also really valuable. This is just more of a different tool because it not only provides analytics, but you're also able to tell the world that you're responsible for something. But this also is a great thing for you if you run a team. Or how many of you run a creative team have more than one person making content for you? Yeah. For those of you that run teams, to be able to compare, oh, Jared was responsible for 60 million views, but Stacy was responsible for 20 million. I can sort of see the value that they're bringing to the team qualitatively. So, yeah, that's Gondola. And then, I think this is it. Okay, and then I have a secret that no panelist will tell you ever. And I'm so sorry because I'm ruining my chance at being on the panel next year. I'm sorry in advance. Okay. Good news, hopefully you learned something today. Bad news, we have been giving the same strategies for years. So other than like very specific how to do this thing with TikTok nowadays, it's okay, but we've been saying the same thing since I was at Vine in 2015. So like I pulled up like an old deck that I gave to like the NHL in 2015, and I was like, oh, you need to be focused on audio, or you need to give relatable content, or you should be tailoring your content that's different for a Vine caption to a tweet. We've been saying the same thing for years. So anybody who gives a panel on social media strategies is probably saying the same thing. So next year, tell your friends to come if we do the same thing. I'm probably going to say mostly the same stuff, but that's okay. And what that means is that when you come out of this, I think this is going to be obviously uploaded to the internet, but if y'all want access to this as like a Google presentation, I'd love to share it with you. You can share it with your teams. There's nothing secret here. And you should think that hopefully you get to come out of this presentation and feel like you're set up not for the next year, but for many years to come in terms of like how you see your social strategy in general. I just said that. That's it. Any questions? Yeah. Okay, so the question is, are there any studies on how does social perform relative to PR? Cool. That's a great question. So is public relations converting the same way that social media is? The good news is if a good public relations firm isn't bringing in social media data and including social media in their plan, then they're probably not a good public relations firm. That being said, there's some really good PR firms that are really good at connecting people to journalists and to publications. It's kind of like when you show up in a room and you have Google on your resume, it helps. Or actually, no, a better example is like if I want to sell a movie and I go to a Netflix, they're going to be like, who are you? But if CAA represents me and goes to Netflix, there may be a better chance. So PR still has that advantage, but if they aren't considering social media into how they plan things, then they're missing on probably the biggest chance for reach. So a PR firm using Gondola is unstoppable because now they know all the extended reach. Oh, I forgot this is like really a cool thing that I didn't show you. See this thing that says 4 matching posts? This is this thing Gondola has that we don't think any other social platform has, which lets you see, or analytics platform, it lets you see the reach on content on your earned media on a per post basis, so you can see your cumulative stats. So there's this dude named Brian Boucher. Brian, if you're watching, you're the man. Brian took some photos in London of Bryce James and Bronny James, and this was shared 55 times for 2.6 million views and 2.3 million likes. And because of Gondola, he can organize it all to one place. So a PR firm could use this and say, hey, we put out this release that Nathan McKinnon was signed for 8 years, and this graphic that we made as a graphic was shared on 30 different platforms for X million views. So it's really valuable. Does that answer? Wow, that makes me so happy. Thanks. Any other questions?
Do you have any good like tips and tricks for when you're not social tailored to selling a product, it's more services, and it like for certain companies it can feel a little boring to still like, oh, where are we gonna really, you can get creative in some ways, but you're kind of like, I mean, if no one else is bought in, but we have like a social team, and for instance, like selling commercial estate, like something like that, it gets kind of like, oh, I can think of fun ideas, but it's kind of boring after a while.
Yes. So the question is, how do you make unique content if you're not providing a product and it's more a service like commercial real estate? So there's a company based in Chicago that has an office in Denver called Indoor Drone Tours, and they have built a whole platform around creating like fast turn FPV drone tours of commercial real estate, and it's awesome. And I think that if you're thinking of how you can make ongoing content, so there's like, because like that sounds like a one-off, like, oh, we'll make a cool drone tour for each building. You can think of it as you'll do it in doses. So instead of just doing one massive FPV video, do like this living room though. That's not commercial. This lobby though, and it's like one crazy sweeping shot. Like instead of thinking of one master video for a property, I would do that. Also, I like that challenge more. Like think about it, if you're like selling a shoe, you can only do so much with this shoe. As I show it off for the second time today, I really like this shoe. With commercial real estate, like you have more opportunity to be innovative. I think that there's the Commercial Source. I think it's her name. Her name is Aviva Sun and Rich. She is a commercial broker, does mostly industrial stuff. She has 1 million TikTok followers. Just a Denver commercial real estate agent who has figured out how to tap into it. And the great way she does it is storytelling. She shows, like, it may not be her properties, but she'll show, Kim Kardashian bought 6 warehouses in Southern California. Why'd she do it? And she uses that green screen style that's big on TikTok. So check out Aviva Sun and Rich. She's the best. She also helped us find our office. She's great. Yeah. I think that the question of how often should you be posting, how often should you be doing stories, I think you should post. That's a good one. I think it should be analytics based. I'm just going to keep punting to analytics on everything. If you look at your numbers, like don't do the same thing over the course of a month. For 2 weeks, post consistently. See if it goes well. For 2 weeks, do a little scattered. See your overall engagement on each 2-week period and compare and contrast. I think that with Twitter and stories, you can be aggressive. Post all the time. Like you have a better chance of posting through quantity versus Instagram. If you want to show up in the algorithm, you may want to post a little less. TikTok is one of those things that you think, oh, I need to let my videos breathe so that they can pop. And then the best creators are posting every day. Like the D'Amelios, they're not waiting for to pop. They're letting it all just go out. They post every single day consistently. And the more you post, especially nowadays, the way the algorithm works on TikTok specifically, if people are going back to your feed to see the beginning of a series, then showing them that you're an active creator will make them more likely to follow you than if you only have a couple posts, they may be less likely to follow your account. Instagram, I think, should be more data-based, but it's also dependent on your goal. If you have a brand and you care mostly about your aesthetic, you may do batch posting. So you may post 3 at a time so you can make your grid look beautiful. And that may be more valuable because people are coming to your brand's main page to judge your quality. So I think it just depends a bit more on a little bit of the analytics, but also aesthetically with Instagram, what you're trying to accomplish. Anything else?
What are your thoughts on LinkedIn, and do you all support LinkedIn?
We don't support for individual posts. I love LinkedIn. I think it's hilarious how everybody makes fun of LinkedIn influencers these days. Are y'all familiar with everybody making fun of LinkedIn? It's really funny. It's like if I wanted to pop on LinkedIn today, I would say I was supposed to present and I lost something that day. I never thought I'd make it. But it was a dongle, and that for some reason will pop. When people have sad things, they start with that. It's weird. But it's actually popping, and people are investing more in it, and we should. So it's a good call. LinkedIn lunatics on Reddit is a thing. Okay, cool. Yeah. Good question. Good question. How can you know what songs are licensable versus what are not on Instagram Reels? A lot of times you'll see, you can do it based on the name, and some people will game it, so they'll use like a Johnny Cash song, and then eventually it'll be like user blank, blank, blank. So look at the user thing first. If it is a mainstream artist right away, try to avoid it. If you see that thing, just make sure that it's derivative enough that you feel a little safe. Like if they use it as a punchline, but most of it is like somebody playing the recorder. Have you seen those memes? It's great. People play a recorder and call it an instrument. It's great. I'd say like start with like that flow. Is it a mainstream artist all right away? Is it a user one, but it sounds too much like a mainstream? And then go from there. Yeah.
I've noticed recently that instead of taking your video down, platforms are just like taking the audio out of your content. What is like the effect of that? Not necessarily losing your root base.
Yeah. Well, the question is, what a lot of platforms are just removing audio instead of removing the whole video from the platform. And I'll say this: I would do anything for Twitter to have that is as a policy, because instead people have to just lose years and years of video libraries. I mean, the good news about keeping it up is that you get to keep your analytics versus a piece of content being deleted. I love it, and I wish Twitter did it. You heard me. Love you. Yeah.
So my business is more service related, so I don't really have a product. What I'm selling is I'm helping people digitize their family photos and slides and reels and all those things. So my audience is going to be a little bit older. So they're not necessarily going to be on Twitter, but they may be on Instagram. They'll definitely be on Facebook. So can you address how you market a service to an older audience?
Yes, how do you market service to an older audience? That's a great one. Also, I had an intern work on digitizing my family photos a few months ago, and it like makes me feel really wholesome. I think that figuring out what styles, I mean, again, it goes back to consume to in order to create. Go use Facebook. Don't trust your like crazy uncle's crazy political opinions there. Try to scroll right past that. But if you are seeing slightly longer videos, so Facebook does value watch time. So you may want to go slightly longer with your watch time and think about how you do probably text on screen a bit more heavily, assuming that like somebody who's older is not going to be as engaged with a TikTok and whatnot where audio is so important. You have to think a lot more about your subtitling and whatnot and stuff like that, and telling stories. Like the way that we're all suckers for somebody coming back from war to see their family, like tap on their back, like at a sports game, like think about what that means and the storytelling you can do around your service, and say like, oh my God, this is her face when she saw that I had digitized all of her photos, and just like, you know, sad music with like a mom crying, like that would crush. I would use your service if I saw somebody like emotional about that. So what would you do about a company that does medical device sales? You can't be as creative. That's a good one. Is it a medical device sale that if you convert one person to buy, then all of a sudden you've recouped a ton of money and you're in a good spot? So that's actually a position where paid social is really valuable. So thinking about doing really tight targeting on paid social to get to the right audience, that's the focus. And if you can play to the storytelling, I think it's good about like this person's life was saved because of this product. But because it's paid, you can be a bit more like, oh, I'm going to target like this demographic of wealth with much stronger ads, much more direct ads versus this I'll be a bit kinder with. Do we have time? How are we on time?
One more question.
I work for a smaller company, like we're only a team of 8, and I do like marketing, like large umbrella, and also operations and also admin. Like there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I think my biggest problem is like finding the energy and the bandwidth for the frequency that social demands. And like if I fall off for a couple weeks and don't post, I feel like I've lost all of the traction I built
So if you're a small marketing team, you need to create content, but you have a million things on your plate. How do you handle it? Take some pressure off yourself. Like you do too much already. If you fall off for a bit, it's fine. You're not gonna followers are much less likely to unfollow than you think they are, and they're going to be there and ripe for great content. Next is do content calendaring and scheduling out so that you do it even if it's 6 days apart per post. Make 4 posts, and then the next month you don't think about it, and then in the middle of the month if you're like, I want to make more, then it's just a complement to it. But do your content calendaring and scheduling out way in advance so that even you, when 4 weeks later you see that you published a post, you're like, oh yeah, I published that. That was me. Also, your office is like a block from ours. I think I was on a gondola with your boss at some point last year. Seems like a good dude. Okay, that's it.
So real quick, thank you, Jared. And no, you're not coming back next year. No, that was really great, wasn't it? You did really good. You did awesome. I just want to make a couple notes here. Tomorrow in this room at 2 p.m., we're flying a guy in from Detroit with Human Design, and he's going to talk about creating emotional bonds between brands and consumers. This is something they've been working on, and they're brilliant at it. It would be a good language to add to your repertoire of what you're doing, so please make note and try to attend. And then Thursday, we're flying someone in from San Francisco. Her name is Linda Gross. I started off this session by mentioning her, but she's talking about wayfinding for post-growth fashion. So it's really about climate crises and unprecedented times. So it's a very strong, kind of powerful message that I think we all need to be reminded of as well. And it's completely worth coming and seeing. So please try to engage for that too. But thank you for attending the Designer Tracks. We love to see you here, and we continue to hope that you get a lot out of it. So be safe.
Follow us on the socials.